My name is Lindsay, and I currently am based in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I have a 9-year-old son who keeps me very active. We love to spend time outdoors, go to the beach, go to the skate park. So we have, a lot of time where we're active and we're outside. I was diagnosed with pars planitis, which is technically a form of uveitis, when I was about 23 years old. Um, and so it's been about 11 years with that. And pars planitis itself is a rare autoimmune condition. And what it is it's basically the body's immune system is attacking the healthy tissues in the eye, and it's specifically in an area of the eye called the pars plana, which is why it's called pars planitis. So, yeah, when that area becomes inflamed, some of those inflammatory cells um, and fluid can leak into, the vitreous of the eye, and so that's what leads to some of the symptoms that I've experienced. I was actually on a road trip with a friend. We were driving to Oregon, and I was driving, some long lengths, and I kept needing him to read out the road signs for me. And so, it was barely noticeable to me, but he definitely picked up on it. And so it did start with kind of blurry vision, is how I noticed it. And then, he, from that experience, encouraged me to go get an eye exam when we got back. Um, I didn't go right away, and then in the following weeks, I started to notice some floaters, which are basically like small black specks within your visual field that kind of move around. And so at that point, I knew that I needed to schedule an eye exam. So I went in shortly after that, and I just went to an optometrist and got a regular eye exam. But luckily, he recognized the condition right away and sent me to a retina and vitreous specialist. So I was really lucky in that respect that I was able to be seen quickly, get a referral quickly, and, get quick treatment. What's kind of wild is that, as I thought about it, I never had a regular eye exam up until that point. I had vision screenings, when you're younger in elementary school and with your yearly physicals, but I had never gone to an actual eye exam with an optometrist or eye doctor. So that was my first regular eye exam, and so definitely recommend those now, to everyone around me. They began putting me on steroid eye drops. I think, steroid injections in the eye are also common. I only had that done once during my pregnancy. Um, but yeah, drops or injections was kind of the first line of treatment. And it did take a while to find drops that were strong enough to kind of reach the inflammation and to tame it down. Um, and then, we started with really frequent dosing, so several times a day, and then tapered down as the inflammation improved. And, at that point, I was probably going to the eye doctor every 4 to 6 weeks to follow up and to get images done and everything like that. And then once the inflammation had gone down, we were able to push those appointments out further. But definitely being seen frequently. But yeah, using those, long-term steroids definitely created some other, complications, cataracts, glaucoma. But I've been on the same eye drops for the last probably 10 years, and they've worked. I think it kind of weaves into every part of your life, emotionally, financially, medically. It definitely plays a role in how I think about my future, things that I plan for. So it doesn't just stay in one part, but, like you mentioned, for example, when I was pregnant with my son, managing the pars planitis meant that I had to kind of switch treatments that were safer during pregnancy. So that definitely added a layer of stress. And then any future pregnancies, I had hoped for had to be put on hold just because of medications I was taking, or, surgeries that I had to go through, or just unexpected things that would come up. So that was really difficult. But, also financially, like I said, I was being seen probably every 4 to 6 weeks. So just, frequent appointments, specialty medications, eye drops that can be very costly. And then, any surgeries really add up over time. So I had to learn how to navigate my insurance benefits really well, learned what was covered, what was best for me, what made the most sense, and really, I think, plan for emergencies too was really important. I had good insurance, and in the past, I've been lucky to have good insurance, but that's also meant that I've had to seek out job opportunities that provide that. And that definitely plays a role, when I'm applying for a position or looking at any opportunity is, how is this going to impact me with my eyes and allow me to be able to see who I need to see and go where I need to go for surgeries if it, means traveling. My eyes are always a part of planning for my future now, just keeping them in mind of what I'm going to need. So definitely, as far as resources, I would start with, prevent blindness, um, and the Aspect program, just because it taught me, first of all, the importance of advocacy, how to be an advocate, what it meant, what it looked like, not only for yourself, but for others too. There was a point when I went to my original provider and I asked about the possibility or what he thought about me getting a second opinion at a nearby university hospital. Just because I had been reading things about immunosuppressants and I was, really interested in kind of just the autoimmune component of the disease. And I felt like that was a much bigger part of the picture than maybe was being told to me. And so, when I asked about that second opinion, I was unfortunately discouraged a bit from seeking that second opinion. My doctor told me that, those immunosuppressants can often cause much worse or other systemic illnesses or complications, that affect things outside of the eyes. And so um, it did instill, I think, a little bit of fear in me in thinking that the steroid drops were probably the safest alternative, the best path forward. Um, but that's where, advocacy and, prevent blindness and just learning about how to ask the right questions, how to, find the right doctors and things like that really help you in your treatment plan. So I think, if anyone who's recently diagnosed can go through the Aspect program first, that's ideal early in your diagnosis. Just building that advocacy skill, I think, is incredibly valuable. And I think another resource that I found actually recently is the Ocular Immunology and Uveitis Foundation, or OIUF. So they also offer a lot of really helpful information, a directory of uveitis specialists, which is what I've been kind of digging into recently, is, trying to find a new provider, and then also, other supportive communities and support groups. Become an expert in your diagnosis. It'll just help you feel so much better and so much more confident in any decisions that you have to make. And, along with that, being aware of your own eyes. So, just being vigilant about if you have new floaters or flashing lights or sudden vision changes, and just being proactive about going to be seen if you need to be and not ignoring things like that. I also think, one thing that I've really had to do since my diagnosis is acceptance. It's something I work through every day. I'm sure those in the Aspect community can relate, to just kind of a feeling of fear that is always there. And so learning to practice acceptance. And one thing I think that I've done to help me with that is, and it sounds so simple, but I have found things that bring me joy, whether it's hobbies or activities, that I know I can continue to do, no matter how much vision loss I have in the future. And so those things, I kind of hold on to, I guess, remind me that, my life isn't defined by how much vision I have. I can still find joy. I can still show up fully in all the things that I want to do. One of them is probably meditation and yoga. I would love to be able to become a trained yoga teacher and teach yoga to those, who have vision loss. And also, one thing on my list that I have not done yet is pottery. I would love to learn wheel throwing pottery. And so, yeah, those are a couple of the things.